and welcome to the Wonder Women of Aviation podcast, a special correspondent for Level Aviation. I'm here with Justin Candy.
No, Justin Lewis.
Justin
Sorry,
Lewis.
That was a joke. I
was actually calling him Justin. You know what? I am not going to edit it out.
I'm messing with her.
I love it. So this is staying in the podcast. So obviously you all can see that he has a personality. He's very charismatic, and he has a special plane here, a microjet. He's going to talk about the microjet, a little bit about the history of it, and a little bit more about his routine. So thank you for being a part of the Wonder Woman of Aviation podcast. Tell me a little bit more about the aircraft, the history of it, and anything else you want to talk about.
This is the world's smallest jet airplane. They call it that, at least a bit of a moniker. We call it the FLS Microjet. This particular one is sponsored by Virgil Gamache Farms. They're the largest farm of hops up in the Northwest, and we're sitting here in a farming community in Scott City, Kansas right now. So it's kind of neat to be sponsored by a company that is intricate to the farming community and then bring it out here to another farming community. It's actually the first time we're able to have that kind of an event happen. And this particular jet's a relatively new one. I had been flying a different small microjet for the past 10 years in the airshow circuit, so we're out here giving this brand new one a legacy. It's the 7th FLS microjet we've made. The history of this goes pretty far back, all the way to somewhere in the 1970s, where a guy named Jim Beatty designed something called the BD-5 and then eventually called the J. The BD-5 originally was a propeller-driven aircraft. It was a home-built aircraft. A lot of people were very interested in it, but very few were ever shipped out, and the company ultimately went out of business. But before they did, somebody was like, hey, this thing looks like it should have a jet engine in it. So they put one in, they tested it out, it worked pretty good, and they sold a lot, but they never shipped any of the kits. And so it made it on the front cover of Popular Mechanics magazine, which made a lot of dreams in the hopes and hearts of everybody, but unfortunately they never came true until we put together the FLS Microjet about 35 years later. The world's smallest jet airplane weighs just over 400 pounds. I go 250 knots at air shows. We tell people 320 miles an hour for if we get the right aerodynamics. And then it's fully aerobatic, pulls 6 Gs. It is a really amazing airplane to fly because you really strap it on. You really feel like you're flying the world's smallest jet. It feels a little bit like a jetpack. I tell people that, if you want to go out and do hard aerobatics and you want to go in cross countries, this is actually a pretty terrible airplane for it. But if you want to go out and just enjoy flying and have kind of a sport aviation, this airplane's perfect for that kind of stuff. You really get the sense that you are actually part of an airplane when you go into the air, because there's just not a whole lot of airplane around you. You really are truly in the sky.
You're literally the airplane, it looks like. Absolutely. So you flew this in here. So how many stops, how much fuel does it typically take? How long does it take you to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, that's actually what a lot of people think, and I don't fly it in here. What I do is these wings, they come right off, but honestly, you can't even take a second pair of underwear if you were going to come in here. So my luggage, and I brought my kids, and my wife came with me to this particular air show, which is outstanding. But we have a special trailer. The wings come off, and we can disassemble it in about 30 minutes and reassemble it in about 30 minutes. We have a special inspection, of course, that we go through, so we're not in a hurry or miss anything. But it's truly not a very difficult airplane to take apart, put back together. So for bringing all the equipment and for some safety factors of traveling across the country in the world's smallest jet, it's just much easier to bring to an air show in a trailer. It's a very, very safe airplane. There's only a few of them out there, and about everybody that wants to fly one ends up talking to me at some point. Okay. I test fly all the new ones, and then anybody that wants to fly it, I essentially interview them. Surprisingly, the most important thing to me that I think has kept the aircraft safe, we've never had an accident in it before, is the finding the person with the right discipline. I do look for variation of experience out there, so if you came into me and you just said, hey, I've only flown an F-16 and that's a pretty super fighter, I go out there and get some experimental aviation or some propeller time, things like that, because it's really a different world when you talk about those kind of aircraft and all of those, that's jet experience, the experience with all the different systems and stuff of building aircraft and then the different types of flying. They all are wrapped up into this single seat aircraft that when I train you in it, I obviously can't go up with you. So when you train, you need to be the right person with the right mindset, with the right skills and the right background before you ever get in this aircraft. And then when you are that, it's a crazy safe airplane to fly.
So training, from a training perspective, is similar just to any typical aerobatic training. I hear a lot of the performers, like my husband, do competition first. Is that the route that you went through to, I know, and you probably have another job as well, but how did you learn or train in this type of aircraft?
That's a great question because I'm kind of a first, right? Okay. I didn't have anybody like me. That's not exactly true. I didn't have a whole lot of people like me to refer to. There were people from the 1970s that still flew this in a legacy sort of way, but no one had ever flown the FLS Microjet, this upgraded version. No one had ever flown with this particular engine in it before. So it was a mixed match of experience. My background, I started flying when I was in high school, so I had a lot of general aviation experience back then. And then I went into the military, so I have a mix of some fighters. I have a mix of some heavy aircraft and some different propeller aircraft. I have quite a bit of different variation in the military there that helped out quite a bit. And then when it came time to do this particular project, the FAA and I really sat down with the program and went through the various steps that we would go through to make sure that we would have a safe program. But I think I didn't know it at the time, but that experience, you know, as you look back on it in a hindsight way, I now see what the FAA sees and goes, oh, that's very concerning. In fact, an insurance agent, I asked them one time, hey, what's it going to take to get this other particular person insured? And they said, oh, they just have to be you. And I went, oh, okay, now it's starting to dawn on me that there's a surmountable level of experience that has to occur in order for someone to get in it. So now that's a lot easier answer, but for most all the other people, but it's because I did that first that now there is a process for people to go through to get experience. And if they want to fly this airplane, they actually end up flying something very similar to it before they come see me too, and then going through an actual program. Very small baby steps to get into it.
Right.
They probably get in, I make them get in and out of it to get comfortable and start it up, boy, half a dozen times before they even roll it on the ground. And then when they roll it on the ground, they still don't take off. I make them taxi it around and get on the runway and do some high-speed runs and stuff. And really, it's just a getting familiar with your environment, getting used to it so that odd new environment starts to become more and more familiar each and every time you do that. And then it's surprisingly not a very difficult thing to do when you just take those little baby steps. By the time you get to the first flight, it's not that big of an event.
Is it similar to like flying your typical jet then?
It's the thing that makes it not so similar to the typical jet. You can see how low it is to the ground.
Right.
You're just about a foot off the ground.
Right.
And so if anyone's ever driven a go-kart at 25 miles an hour, it feels like you're driving it at 90 miles an hour.
Okay.
It's just things are going by so fast.
Right.
So you're at go-kart height doing an actual 90 miles an hour on the ground. And that can look a little funny to people.
Yeah.
So that is kind of one of the hardest things to get over, is convincing yourself that when you're coming in for a landing and you're in the flare and you're trying to round out that landing, that you can go a little lower.
Right.
But we have a plan to do that too. The first landings are always bad, but there's a method to it to get them down, and then they start getting used to it. After just 2 or 3 landings, and I can go lower.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, you just definitely have to get comfortable with it. And you said it goes 90 miles an hour, or it goes faster than that?
For just the landing, you're about 90 miles an hour when you touch down.
Okay. How fast does it go?
About 320 miles an hour. It's
Wow,
yeah.
that's pretty fast.
I teach people it's 3 airplanes. There's a slow speed airplane, so it's got this humongous tail compared to the size of the wing. The entire elevator, the stabulator rather, is about the size of one of the wings.
Okay.
And that's so that it can go slow, and it's close coupled, meaning that the tail is actually pretty close to the center of gravity where it pivots. Where most aircraft, the tail's kind of far away, so you get more leverage.
Okay.
That's why the tail has to be so big.
Okay.
But that tail is way, way too large at 250 knots. And so it takes just very little pressure on the stick to make it do big changes. So the 3 aircraft are somewhere below about 120 knots. You get the slow range aircraft that flies a little bit more like a Cessna, actual inputs. The 120 to about 180 knots, it flies very comfortably. It's a really, really good flying airplane. Bits of stick pressure, a little bit of movement. And then above about 180, 200 knots, somewhere in that range, it's an airplane that you need to put everything down, and now you're going to pay attention to this while you're at those speeds.
Well, yeah, I'm sure it takes a lot of focus, dedication, practice, and I'm sure you have to be fit, obviously, to fit in that type of aircraft as well. Before I let you go, I know Sean, my co-host and correspondent for Level, would love for me to ask you this question. So if you could fly with anyone in the past, any person in just think historically, who would you fly wing by wing, side by side with?
Oh my goodness, that's a difficult question to ask. Boy, when I was when I was young, the big deal was, of course, to go with someone like Chuck Yeager and those kind of things. But I'll tell you, that whole era of pilots, that's kind of where the greatest experience level was for me, because they transitioned from flying propeller airplanes off boats in World War II. In just like a 10-year period. They were going through Korea, just the advancement in aviation. Everything was a test. It wasn't uncommon for pilots to have to bail out of airplanes. They spoke about bailing out as if it was just a normal thing to do. Oh, I had to bail out today. Where today it's a pretty it's a big event, right? It makes the news and all this other kind of stuff. And the extraordinary almost heroism of that generation to advance aviation as quickly as they did through all that technology. Boy, I would love to just sort of go and fly with anyone and from that era. I think if I had to pick someone, the name that really comes to mind is a guy named Scott Crossfield. Okay. Yeah, he broke Mach 2. He really was a kind of a quiet hero. And he flew notably the X-15. He had a break in half once on landing when there was an issue there. So he's, I think there's even some scenes where he was on an X-15 test stand, and an engine, when they were testing it, blew up, and it blew the cockpit off on the test stand. He was sealed inside, laying sideways, and they were trying to rescue him, and he was inside saying, "Don't rescue me, I'm in the safe place, and you're on the outside where it's on fire." Wow. So things like that are just remarkable stories of heroism from that generation.
Oh, awesome answer. And I heard, for those that want to see you, I heard you were part of AVIOR. Can you talk a little bit about AVIOR and what was your role in that? For those of you that were Oshkosh, I heard that you may have been like an anti-hero. Yeah, anti-hero. Maybe that's what they call it. Bad guys. I think evildoer. I don't know what you want to call it. But I was certainly something there. It's pretty funny that this is a Wonder Woman thing. So I almost feel like I shouldn't give up who I actually am when I put on my other. Right? I took the world's smallest jet, and I was a drone, an evil drone attached to Matt Youngkin's Beech 18 and at Oshkosh. He dropped me off in front of the crowd. I think it's hard for me. I was looking up at him, but I think we were maybe 100 feet above the ground, and he pulled off, and then I went to work just doing bad deeds and making things blow up and stuff. But AVIOR came in with his good guys and saved the day and pushed me away. So, what was your, I guess, not superhero name, but your name? Did you have a name for yourself?
No, I didn't. We should come up with a name, Every bad guy's got a name, so.
Maybe the boys can help you?
Yeah. I'm sure they could. They'd come up with a million names real quick. So.
Awesome. And I'm sure we can check you out. Where can we find you? I see airplane all over you. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about the microjet, learn more about yourself? I'm sure you have some sponsors that you want to plug.
There's some information on FLSmicrojet.com. There's also the Virgil Gamache Farms. They represent us pretty well when we're out doing air shows. So any one of those two websites. But I think the Virgil Gamache Farms for me is awful neat. If you're not familiar, which I wasn't, of that whole industry. When we started getting wrapped up into it, it's a little bit like going to those wine places where you're sipping wine and the beautiful fields and wedding venues and such. It's basically the same thing, except it's beer a lot of times. And so the culture is just a little bit looser as far as that. The wine has a certain kind of a higher level culture.
Right, the wine crowd and the beer crowd.
Yeah, and then the beer crowd. So not to undermine any crowd, it's just different crowd. And so, I kind of didn't know that existed in that world. And so I love hanging out with those guys. And when you go to their website, you sort of see these images that look a lot like the wine country and the beautiful venues that they have and stuff. And really, it's these hops and the same cultures. It's just beer country. And so we love hanging out there. And if you go to their website, though, you'll be able to check out all that kind of stuff. And it's really neat to see.
Okay, cool. You guys hear that? We're definitely going to check out their website. We're going to check out the beer. Check out the microjet. Thank you all for listening to the Wonder Woman of Aviation special correspondent for Level Aviation. Thank you for your time. You're going to perform today. Have a good and safe show.
Yeah, we'll do. Thank you.
See you next time.